this is Scott from Scott in the System. I believe today is our second episode for season 2, and our guest today is McWilliams from MPAS, and your title was?
I'm the Director of Public Policy and Media Relations.
Okay.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. It was started in 73 when we needed protection and advocacy.
Sure. Michigan Protection and Advocacy Service is one of 57 protection and advocacy agencies throughout the country.
Okay.
We were formed in the mid-1970s after Congress and the media did an investigation of abuse and neglect in state hospitals and places that serve people with developmental disabilities. So Congress passed a law called the Developmental Disabilities Assistance and Bill of Rights Act, and among other things, that law created the protection and advocacy system. So we're the Michigan version of that.
Okay, and you say there's 57 through the country, right?
Yes, all 50 states, the District of Columbia, territories. There's a specific protection and advocacy agency for Native Americans that serves the entire country. Okay,
so that's where we get a little more than 50. I was just trying to figure that out.
I've worked for 3 of them. I'm trying to get stationed to the Virgin Islands Protection and Advocacy Agency sometime in January, I think.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess to start with, could you explain your information referral process?
Sure. So we provide a variety of services, and one of the services we provide is information and referral, which is short-term assistance to anyone who has a question about disability rights or about disability issues. We have advocates who answer the phone and respond to website inquiries. Those, when people contact us, their contacts are confidential. So you can call us. We're not allowed to tell anyone that you called. You can contact us through our website, MPAS.org, and submit a confidential question to us, and we'll do our best to try to answer it for you.
Now, are those folks volunteers or are they staff?
Those folks are staff. We have about 40 staff altogether, including a number of advocates who do information and referral service. Okay. And that's all based out of Lansing? Or? I'm sorry?
That's based in Lansing?
Yes. We have 2 offices. One, our main office is in Lansing. Most of our employees work there. We have an office in Marquette also. They like to think of themselves as the main office, but they serve the Upper Peninsula and also do some work in other parts of the state. Okay,
so when people call, this could be a various type of information requests.
Yes, about 25% or so of our calls relate to education. Where people are calling, they have questions about school services for a student with a disability. We get a lot of calls about Social Security. We get some calls about mental health services, about long-term care services in nursing homes. We get calls about employment, about housing, about all kinds of issues.
So therefore, is a portion of the staff, separated for these different inquiries, or?
We have staff who specialize in particular areas. When you call us, you'll talk first to an intake specialist, and the specialist will try to figure out what your call's about, ask you a couple questions. We have to collect some demographic information because we're funded by the federal government, and so once we get that basic information, we'll route you to the person we think would be most likely to be able to answer your question.
Was the resolution of disability-related issues?
So we try, and when we talk to people, we try to help give you advice on what your rights are, and we try to give people information on some possible solutions or some strategies to try to resolve those disputes. On occasion, we may talk to another person. So if you're having trouble, say, with a local office of some agency, we may, with your permission, may call that person, see if we can get more information.
You advocate on their behalf.
Right. I mean, we'll try to. We don't have enough time to provide in-depth representation to everyone, but we do. And if we can resolve a problem with a phone call, or just ask a couple of questions, or to send materials, or send some information to people, then we'll try to do that for you.
Okay. Technical assistance, is that like different devices, or?
We provide through the same people.
Okay.
Technical assistance is the kind of support that we would provide if somebody just needed some information.
Oh, okay.
So if we try to help people advocate for themselves as much as possible. It's part of our mission. And so sometimes just giving someone the information they need or the support they need to be able to resolve their issue on their own.
You give them access to that resource, or how to go about getting it per se.
Yes, and we have some written resources. We have some resources that are on our website. We have some paper we can send people, various forms depending on what works best for them.
Okay. What about legal representation? Where appropriate?
Right. So we have attorneys. We have some openings, but we have 5 to 6 attorneys who can provide representation to people. We also have some non-attorney advocates who can help out in some circumstances. We only represent people in particular kinds of cases because we get about 6,000 or 7,000 calls for assistance a year.
Wow.
Many people want or need legal help or some kind of support like that. So if it's the kind of case that we take, we'll take a look at that. We'll investigate, see if there's something that we can do for them, and then if it looks like there's something we can do, then we can provide legal representation. We take on probably about 5% of the cases, of the case requests that we get.
So I guess the obvious question would be, where does the other 95% usually go?
That's a good question. There aren't enough resources to advocate for everyone. We try to help anybody who contacts us with something. So if somebody calls us and we can't represent them, we'll at least try to give them some strategies or some ideas on what they can do for themselves. Try to give them some referrals to other people who might be able to help them in some situations. That works.
Within this 5%, is there certain issues that you represent more than others, or?
Yes, we have what we call advocacy priorities, and that's not to say that the call that anybody contacts us with is not a priority. It certainly is a priority, but for us, we've identified some issues that the community has told us and the laws have told us that people need particular help on, and so that's what we try to focus our representation on. So, for example, what our core mission when we were first started was to try to help people who are being abused or neglected in institutions. And so one of our priority areas is if there is abuse or neglect happening in a state hospital or in a nursing home or in other places of institutions where people with disabilities are, then one of our priorities is to try to investigate and try to address those particular problems. So we have 5 areas of priority altogether. Abuse and neglect in institutions is one of them. We look at issues related to individual rights, in particular people who may be subjected to abuse or neglect under a guardianship.
Or this would be the regular home, or?
That could be anywhere.
Okay.
So if somebody was living in a home and they had a guardian who, say, wouldn't let them leave, or they were somehow denying their right to vote or denying some other basic right, that might be a case that we would
Basic
look
civil right.
at. Right, that might be a case that we'd look at.
Okay.
We also, under that priority, look at improving conditions and access to voting for people with disabilities. We look at employment, supporting competitive employment. We look at providing support to access to community services such as community mental health services. And we also look at trying to help children with disability-related behavior try to get into school and stay in school so they can succeed and move forward with their lives.
Yeah, I have a few stats here, and one of them that was most alarming to me is 1 out of 5 adults with disabilities has not graduated from high school, compared to less than 1 of 10 adults without disabilities. That's quite alarming.
It is indeed. The graduation rates for students with disabilities are much lower than they are for all students as a whole. And if you look at the graduation rates for students with behavior-related disabilities, such as mental illness or autism spectrum disorder or other kinds of behavior-related issues, their graduation rates are even lower than that. It's very alarming. So one of the reasons why we try to do work in that particular area is to try to get children with disabilities to get access to school, to make sure they're in school, make sure that they have access to the same kind of curriculum and challenging standards that other students have, that they have access to good instruction, that they have access to the needed supports so they can succeed in school and so they can utilize their strengths, and try to bump that graduation rate up a little bit, because you're right, that is a real problem, and it's often the key to getting students to the chance to be successful in other parts of their lives and later on in employment and living in the community.
And as we all know, in today's world, you are almost required a college education to have the simplest jobs.
Right.
So if they're not, or don't have their diploma, it's going to make it very hard to get into college, quite obviously.
Yes. It's certainly one of the things that makes it a lot easier is if you get through and not only get your diploma, but also have success in school and get the skills and the supports that you need so you can move on and succeed in either college or whatever kind of post-secondary life that you choose for yourself.
Yes. What would you say contributing factors are to these type of problems?
Let me go back. In 1975, when the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act was passed, there were over 1 million students with disabilities who were out of school completely in the United States.
Because they were isolated or hidden,
There were all kinds of reasons that people gave for not letting them in school, and there were 2 to 4 million students who were only in school part of the time. So one of the goals is to try to make sure that students get into school. First of all, that everyone has the right to an education. If you have a disability, you have the right to get into school and to get an education. And then to get the supports necessary, so the next step is so people can succeed. And it's been a struggle to do that. I mean, that law was passed, signed by President Ford in 1975, and that was over 40 years ago. Now we've got people in school. Now we're trying to get the services and supports there so people can succeed.
How much would you say these problems fall back on perhaps poor parenting skills,
You know,
not advocating on the children's behalf.
you know, I don't blame parents for these circumstances, because we don't make parenting students easy, and we don't, and for parents who have students with disabilities, in some ways we make it even more challenging, because we put an incredible burden on them to try to navigate a system that's very complicated, to use the right language, to make the right kinds of requests, to know the rules, and then to have to push even harder than parents have to push in general to get their children what they need. So our job is not so much to try to figure out whether somebody's doing a good job as a parent or not, but to give them the tools that they can use and give them the supports they need to try to make it so their children have the best chance to succeed that they possibly can.
I guess, therefore, what would you say would be some tools they could use to start with if they feel their children are not getting the education that they deserve?
Well, the first is to understand that as a parent, your child's going to have a terrific life, and that if people try to tell you otherwise, don't listen. So once you know that, and you have faith that your child's going to be able to succeed and thrive in life and in school, then it's a matter of knowing information about schools, about the system, about the system of rights that guarantee students access to school, and then to know that there's help out there and support, that when things get difficult for you, that there are not only other parents that can help you, but also there are professionals who can provide information and support to you to help you succeed as a parent too.
So if there's parents out there wondering, it would be feasible for them to call your office to get more information to give them proper direction?
Yes. As I say, about 25% of our calls relate to school. And so we have people who understand that system pretty well. We can give you advice, we can give you information, we can give you resources to support you, and in some cases we may be able to take on and assist you directly. But we'll get you something to provide you some kind of support.
Yeah, so the parents not frustrated going nowhere.
Well, it can be very frustrating, and it's a system. The school system is always struggling to make sure that it has enough resources to serve everyone. It has a huge mission. It has to do a lot of different things, and the people who are in schools are working really hard, and they're doing the best they can with what they got. And it's just a matter of making sure that students with disabilities don't get left out in moving forward.
Yeah, I must say I was very fortunate in that aspect way back in the day. These kinds of things were not what they are today, and I had some very wonderful parents that advocated on my behalf to make sure I got the proper education I deserve.
Well, I hope you thank them on Mother's Day and Father's Day.
Yeah, well, I do, even though they're both not here anymore.
Well, thank them in your heart then.
Oh, yes.
Good.
That's why I talk about them here, because obviously without them I wouldn't be where I am today.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So one of the things we look at is people with disabilities often, historically have been on the edges of society and have not been included in their communities, and not been honored with the same kinds of rights that most people take for granted in the United States. The right to make decisions on their own, the right to decide who they want to be with, who they want to live with, where to live.
That's more or less been decided for them.
Right.
up to fairly recently.
Well, and historically, people with disabilities have not had those rights and those decisions honored, and so part of our advocacy is to make sure that we try to help elevate those rights so that people with disabilities have the same kinds of individual rights and privileges that anybody has.
Employment barriers.
Mm-hmm. So the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is as high as 70%.
Yeah, that's what I see here.
Yeah, and that includes people who, and many of those folks want to work, can work. They want to work competitively. That is, they want to earn the same kind of money that people generally earn. They don't want to be subjected to having to settle for a sub-minimum wage, for example, which the law allows, unfortunately. They want to be able to work in the community. They don't want to work separated out from other people. They want those same economic opportunities that everybody else has. And the fact that we can't provide that, in an economy that has such low unemployment, that we can't provide that right now is a real problem.
Well, I'm sorry, but I strongly feel the current system is not right, being, the issue is most folks like me that require home health care services, that is like a $2,000-3,000 cost over and above normal daily living expenses.
Right.
So therefore we feel obligated to stay within the system as opposed to going out there and try to do a 40-hour week job.
Right. So a lot of people think that because if you need supports, you can't work, and there are lots of ways that you can work and still get those supports. So some of it is getting information and support so that you know what you're capable of getting. Beyond that, we want to make sure that people get the supports they need so they can be as productive as they possibly can.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. It doesn't seem very inviting.
No, it's very challenging. The sad thing about our current system is that we base a lot of our services on finding that people have some kind of problem or they have some kind of challenge in what they're doing, rather than looking at people's strengths. And if you can look and say what kind of support does a person need to be able to do the same kind of work that other people do, or work that's customized for people. And one of the fringe benefits, I think, of advocating to make sure that people with disabilities have the right kind of supports to be able to work competitively is that you find that the kind of support that you provide to a person who has a label of a disability is often the kind of support that you can provide to other workers to make their jobs stronger and better.
So it's not like you have to give them special treatment per se.
No, everybody should have the right to be able to work with the right supports that they need to contribute.
Right, exactly.
Right. So some of our advocacy, one of the services that I didn't get a chance to talk about is we also do systemic advocacy. That means we advocate for policies and laws that help people with disabilities be more part of their community, be able to work and be able to participate. And so there are policies that we work on right now to try to make work more accessible to people with disabilities, so they can work and earn more money and be part of the community.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say the way it's set up right now, it's all or nothing. If you depend on assistance like I do, they don't want to meet you halfway.
Right, and so part of our advocacy is to try to change that approach. So that's part and parcel of bringing people with disabilities into the community, helping people with disabilities become empowered to take control of their own lives and to have that voice in the community along with everyone else.
And part of that problem, as well as there's such a lower percentage, is that I think here says 20% below voters with disabilities are 20% lower than those without when it comes to voting.
Yeah, I don't know, Scott, there are 35 million Americans who have disabilities who are eligible to vote. And that's a huge group of people.
Right.
Voters with disabilities tend to register at lower numbers, and even when they're registered, they tend to vote less. And what's sad about that is that that's power that's untapped. I mean, that is the power to take control of your life. And the other thing about voting is that voting is such a signature event of being American. That whole sense of going to your polling place and casting your vote just along with everybody else is such a right of citizenship in America. That to me is a signature part of being in your community, is being able to go vote. And so part of our advocacy is to try to understand what kind of barriers are keeping people from registering and what kind of barriers are keeping people from voting even when they are registered. And there are all kinds of barriers that have to be overcome. Some of them are attitudinal and some of them are physical.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's many, aspects, but do you feel sometimes they're intimidated to go into the physical voting booth? Or?
I think that one of the reasons, there's a group called Self Advocates Becoming Empowered. They did a survey nationally about adults with disabilities who didn't vote, and they asked them, why didn't you vote? And they said, well, one of the reasons they didn't vote is because they felt like they didn't understand enough about the voting process to do it right. And that's, and that's something that we can do something about, by giving people not only the information that they want, to make them feel comfortable, but also to make them feel like they belong, and say like, you belong here just like everybody else. And so don't be afraid to come in and vote. I mean, nobody understands issues perfectly, but you understand them as well as anybody else, and you have the right to be here.
Yeah, just because you're disabled doesn't always mean you're not as smart, because we all know there's many voters that are perfectly able-bodied that probably know less more than not.
Yeah, I'll pass comment on that one.
I think that we're almost done. Are there any events or anything coming up that you would like to talk about?
Well, every year we gather input on what kind of work we should be doing, and so call us, go to our website, tell us what you think we should be doing. We gather that information, we give that to our board every fall, and they give us direction on what kinds of work we should be doing. So that's really important that we hear from the community about that. This is an election year, so the voter registration deadline is in early July for the primaries. Go out and register, go out and vote, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to have your voice heard. You belong here.
Yeah, and folks, don't forget there's absentee ballot voting, right, where somebody can, get the 40, or you can do it by mail.
Right. Right. So, and that's not something that you should be forced to do, but you also can do it just like anyone else.
Yeah, that's how I always done it. I never set foot in an actual voting district booth, so to speak.
Right. There are lots of things going on. We do work on housing. We do work on the Americans with Disabilities Act. We do work on mental health services. There's a lot happening with all those systems right now. So, learn more. Learn about what's going on because all these changes affect you as a person who lives in Grand Rapids and lives in this area in West Michigan. These things all affect us, and only by pulling together can we make people's lives better.
Yeah, don't be afraid to get involved.
Right, right.
I was always told we are our own best advocates. So.
Well, and part of our philosophy is to try to support that. So, and we do that through the free supports that we provide. That is one thing that I wanted to make sure people understand is that even though we have lawyers and advocates, our services are free. So, regardless of whether you're rich or poor, you can contact us, and we'll do what we can.
Okay. I think that'll do it today, folks. I thank you for watching. Thank you very much.